Actually, I said we should base it on 300,000 because I have a feeling that with some, there are gonna be overages this year. This this fiscal year for the county, so I was figuring 300,000 and just, make quarterly payments of $35,000 to them. But I mean, we can go off the 292,474 and make the quarterly payments off of it.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, I looked at 18 salary, right? I multiplied it times 3%, and I come up with a different figure down here than you guys do. That's why I asked if you guys all agreed upon these numbers, right?
I went with the numbers that were given to me.
But what's 192, 152 times 3%?
I don't know how to figure, I'll figure it real quick.
I got 57, 64, 56, right? And if you add that to that, you're gonna come up with 198, 916. So, but if you all agree upon that,
57, 64, 56.
is that right?
Yeah.
And take that plus 192, 152.
It was 197, 916, 56.
Yeah, just round, it was just rounded up.
Just rounded up by 43 cents.
Alright. Alright, so if you guys all agree upon that, Sheriff, you would, I mean, since you were part of that discussion, do you have any opinion either way on that?
I appreciate it.
So you're obviously in favor if we was to cover 50%?
Let's turn money down.
But you were part of the,
Right,
this
yeah.
figure.
You know, Lou sat down the other day and. So what is the number? 50% of what?
50%, I mean, Eric's saying, there's might be some overages, but you might as well say we're $150,000 a year. I mean, 292, 472, and there might be some overages and.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna go over $7,000. I think the overtime's gonna go over because of some staffing issues that they're having.
Well, why don't we consider this?
I mean,
Why don't we just consider payments in arrears and then just cover 50% of actual cost? Has that ever been thought of? I mean, instead of guessing what 50%
Right.
is, paying it as we go, or we just make up the difference later, or, you know what I
or we
mean?
could pay 50% of the 292, and then if there's overages over that last,
Then we vote on it
then we
separately.
vote on it separate to cover
We'll
that.
know next year, right after the December 1st, with the accrual system that the county's doing now, because the 2018 calls are exact.
Right.
We know exactly, because with the accrual system, we know exactly what it is. So in December 10th of next year, we'll know exactly what it was, and we'll see if it's up above or below, and if
I guess that would probably be better, because then we could have a separate motion on covering that extra 50% of that 2293, right?
that's fine.
But I think we should go ahead and cover the 50% of that 292, and if it's over that, then we'll address it at a later date.
Right?
You'll get my vote, one way or the other. I don't agree with this only 50% just because if we have no say, I mean. it's
I
not
guess
our
what
dispatchers,
say do you,
So,
I mean. give us-
well, when we have people complain that there's an issue with dispatch and we can't do nothing about it, but we're paying 50%, the board takes a hit on something that we're unable to do anything about.
I think that's that line that we're talking about, is that clearing that up, of who's,
Well,
But I'm
right
gonna
there,
vote.
right there is who's in charge of it. There's no doubt about that. It's not 911, it's the sheriff. They're
and I
his
think what
employees,
Ryan said.
and it's his decision to make on dispatch and all of that. And, if you have concerns, then we'll call the sheriff in and we can talk about it, and you can express your opinion, whether there's the problems. And, I mean, I don't disagree with you, because the concerns you have with dispatch affects how 911 is being dispatched. I agree totally with that. And if there is concerns, especially involving just 911, then it is our concern and we need to address it with the sheriff.
Yeah.
With her new, job description, you know, that's part of supervising how the 911 calls are being handled, but ultimately it boils down to him. Because, you know, there is an agreement between the 911, you know, back when we first started this, you know, that the sheriff will do, the sheriff's department will do the dispatching for 911. We have that agreement. But I understand what you're saying. But I just wondered if there was other things, you know.
Well, the fact too that, you said that when he asked, that this money may not be going into dispatch, it's available if Jeff would need something, but we're putting money into dispatch. And we have
And 100% of that money is going to dispatch. It's not just, I mean,
Right.
Then why was everybody, people shaking their head no?
Well, because the money technically that we pay the county goes into the county general fund, and then it's in there. Because they pull out of the general fund to pay Jeff's bills, or the sheriff's department's bills, and that's where they get the budget from.
you know, half of that money that goes in the general fund, it just turns around and goes back to this page of the dispatchers. Pays all the, you know, part-time help, the health insurance.
I just feel going from 40 to 50 is quite a big chunk. Nothing's really changed, but like I said, I'm one vote, so however I vote, I'm one vote.
So what, I guess, Carl, how does the county obtain funds for additional personnel at dispatch for county employees? How does that work? If you hire extra people, how does that work at dispatch for county? Who pays for that? Is that levied under taxes?
Yeah, it's levy money.
So then you would raise the taxes if you hired 2 more dispatchers for the sheriff's department, right? You would raise taxes. Is that what you're saying?
You might have to, correct?
So by us agreeing,
Or take money from something else to pay for this.
right, but the right thing to do is to go to the people and say, you know, you need 10 deputies, then you're gonna pay for it, and you're gonna pay for it through taxes or other sources, right? I mean, is that how it works? I'm asking, right? I mean, like, if you hire more people, you gotta have that money come from somewhere. It's gotta be tax based, right?
Correct.
And what you're asking for, or the county is us, or Eric, is to cover 50% of those costs, which would basically limit our tax liability by 50% for the dispatchers on hiring people, right? Is that basically what you're saying?
I guess, you know, you throw it all in a pot,
Right.
you know, and you gotta decide, you know, from that pot, you know, we got all the other agencies or elected officials, offices
Right.
throughout the county, not the county highway, you know, because that money comes totally from something.
But we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, is my point, right? Without a voice at the table, like Brian's saying. I think what Brian's trying to say is, and I agree with Brian, is we're gonna cover 50% of the dispatch total cost. And whether or not we pay 10% or 50%, that cost is gonna be there. And yes, Jeff is the man in charge, right?
Right.
But if we take our 50% and we go play somewhere else, then, like you said, it's probably not sustainable. But Jeff's gonna have dispatchers and we're gonna have dispatchers, but it doesn't make sense to do that. So we have to try to limit the tax liability to all the citizens and do the right thing, but we also need the best service to do that, right? And I'm sorry, but for somebody to say he's the one in charge and nobody else has a say at the table, but yeah, you're gonna cover 50%, I don't agree with that either. And I'm only one vote. You know, the way we came up with the 40% is to try to get that extra chair in there to better the service, because there was times when there was a fire call or there was an accident and a fire call and this and that, and we had one person sitting up there and trying to do all that. And what we tried to do was better the service to all the constituents and all the callers that are even passing through this county. And by adding a second person in that chair, we thought we'd improve the quality and limit our liability of something bad happening, right? And so it all started out with the second chair, and then the cost of that second chair, and then it's came up to 40% of their time, and now we're up to 50% of their time. But, you know, we're adding, and, you know, whether it's the 911 money, because we couldn't probably sustain, maybe, I mean, we don't know that, but, 10, 12, 15 years, we could sustain for a while of running the system, but we don't know what the state's gonna do, right? You don't know what the state's gonna do with this funding, and that might go away. But to say we're gonna give $200,000 or $150,000, for what? I mean, what do we have to say in it? Because now I think we have issues, and we all heard it. Your dispatchers suck. They ain't our dispatchers, right? They're his dispatchers, right? So, what do we do? That's the confusion part. How can we fix it? Do we how about we say half of you work for the sheriff and half of you work for 911? Right? I mean, I don't know how to fix it. But I think that's what we need to do. And I have no problems giving money to lower my tax burden. Trust me, I have no problems doing that whatsoever.
Well, why don't I have a couple other county board members come to your next meeting, and we can have an open discussion about it.
Right, and I think that during our planning session, right?
Right.
Yes, Mr. Allen?
Just have a suggestion, Carl. You mentioned your original resolution that formed it, that put what you have now in place. The county board has the power to amend that resolution to address this very issue.
Right.
That's the
It's
simplest
something we can
solution.
talk about in our planning session, right? Thank you for that. But yeah, and I think that's what we need to do. But I don't know if you guys have enough information at this point or feel comfortable. I feel comfortable voting at this time, one way or the other, because I know the elected officials of the county and the sheriff and Nanette are gonna work together to make it right. But I think we still have to be open in the near future of how we can clear up those, organizational structure of the dispatchers versus the sheriff versus 911 board versus our coordinator and the extra job duties that are assigned administratively versus the sheriff, and the buck stops there. That's where it stops, but there's gotta be a level in between, I believe. That's where I feel.
That, and if we would've had this at our study session, instead of 5 minutes before we vote on it, that gives me
Well-
plenty of time to check any reserves that I
You
have.
just got the.
Carl just got the stuff together the other
Maybe I
day.
need to table for now. Go to a study session and then come on to our next.
Somebody's, all they gotta do is make a motion.
I'll make a motion to table it.
I'll second that. Weird.
Fine with me, either way. I mean, like I said, I have enough information to make a vote from trust, but whether we go into, the next meeting, next study session, because where study sessions will be done. As far as your budgetary reasons, I understand, that it's our fiscal year starts December 1, right? So we're already past that date, but I think that you would be okay if we maybe have some more discussion in a study session to work this out.
Because if we're not having discussion, I mean, there's a lot of other issues here, not just personnel.
Right.
This whole, and it's always been one of my things, there's a lot to be talked about, it's not 150 we're doing here, but the county's not bought a console or anything for years, and we're gonna have to spend another $250,000 here before long, just for one of those. We take the burden for that whole thing easily, I mean, we're glad to do it. Nobody has I don't think about here, I don't speak for myself, I have a problem paying the money that we pay for whatever, 50% on Troy and everything else. There's not just the dispatchers that I think that we have on the table, and everybody's got a good understanding of what we contribute to that. I've expressed that before, but I mean, we're talking at this point, we're well over $1 million and some odd dollars that we just.
And I've mentioned this several times to the board, and we've talked about it, that you have over the years have helped.
And we've not
County.
hesitated, we've never hesitated.
And we won't hesitate, we will continue, but I think there's a lot more that can be gained from this, from discussion with,
Well, and we can pay the arrears, because we just voted today to pay the September, October, November.
well, I understand that, but we've done it last time, we've done a contract basically for full amount, but we do it in quarterly payments, right? So, and that's what we would continue to do, and we will continue to work with the county board to make the system the best that we can, but I think that there's a lot more that we could offer and to discuss if we open this up that's gonna be better than just some figures there, right? There's gotta be what's gonna improve the service, how we going to, you know, in the big picture. But I think that those study sessions need to happen. And they will happen.
Yeah.
Before our next meeting. So we got a vote to table it in a second. Carl?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Coniston?
Yes.
Gates?
Yes.
Carl? Yes. I vote yes.
You vote for
Yes.
Carl just did a head nod, yes,
it?
but
Oh,
I didn't
You
hear
did.
you, did you? Okay.
he done it. All right. Is there any other business? And thanks for doing that, Eric and Carl, and, you know, thanks for putting those numbers together, and we'll continue this stuff. Is there any other business? With that being said, I'd like to, close out a regular meeting and then go into closed session. And the reason we're going to close session is for personnel issues, for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, basically, right? That's the reason we're going into it. Then when we come out of closed session, and we will
Do you need a motion?
make a motion for the director evaluation and any annual wage adjustment. So I have a motion to go into closed session. Eric? Carl seconds it. Merle?
Yes.
Dave, yes. Johnson? Gates?
Yes.
Gates? Carl?
Yes.
No, yes. We'll take a short little break, and then maybe I'll come out and get you, or you can stay here or whatever, but take a